Greetings, gentle listeners, and welcome to the Short Story Central. Today we invite you to join us on a journey through another carefully designed original story, crafted to bring you to tears and then warm your heart. As we begin another literary adventure together, 'tis with a somber joy that we present to you our mystical tale for this evening, a narrative titled The Willow. Now, dear listeners, allow the outside world to fade away as our voices guide you through a world of fantasy in this moving story. Without further ado, sit back, relax, and let the show begin.
I'll always remember that day more than any other. More than my wedding day. More than the birth of our first child. A man never forgets the last time he sees his family. I remember her so vividly. My beloved Autumn. She was my beacon of warmth and kindness, and we were blessed with our two beautiful children, Hazel and James. Hazel, our eldest, was a reflection of me in so many ways. Strong-willed and fiercely independent. At 17, she possessed a quiet determination and a thirst for adventure that often led her into the surrounding grove, her curiosity driving her to explore. James, on the other hand, was our bundle of boundless energy, his infectious laughter echoing through the halls of the house all day. At 11 years old, he was a wild mix of mischief and joy, his enthusiasm a constant source of delight for us. They were my treasures. I remember exactly what I was doing when Jensen rolled up. James was helping me put the wheel back on our small lumber wagon, and I picked up the sound of gravel under tires. I thought it was our neighbors or one of Hazel's friends, so I didn't pay much attention, but when I heard Jensen say my name, a heavy dread fell over me. Whatever he had to say to me, this could be serious.
Kado, it's good to see you, but I do wish it was under better circumstances. Look, I know this is the last thing anybody wants, but we need your skills, Kado. You know your way around a threat.
We spoke for a quarter of an hour, drawing the attention of my family.
We'll have a flight prepared for you within 12 hours. I'll meet you at the airfield.
Jensen peeled out of our gravel driveway, heading back towards the county. Autumn came up to me and asked what it was all about. I didn't know how to say what he had told me. They just want some input from a couple of my squad from back in the day. I remember the look in her eyes, that understanding, heavy, sad look. Hazel, James, come on you guys, I want to show you something. I don't know what inspired the idea in my head, but I'd made my choice. It was time to show them. I remember Autumn's little knowing smirk as we gathered together and I led them into the grove of trees, the setting sun beginning to cast a warm golden glow over the treetops. We came out into a clearing, in the center of which a hill rose up, a massive, draping, weeping willow standing majestically above everything. Its branches swayed gently in the breeze, casting long shadows over us.
You brought us out here to see a tree?
Just wait a minute, Hayes. As the sun cast its last colorful light over the clearing, the night surrounded us, the wind calming. The moon began to peek over the crowns of the surrounding trees, the night sky now alight with stars, and underneath the draping branches of the willow tree, little glowing lights began to flicker to life and flit about. Time seemed to stand still as we stood, admiring the tree's beauty. It was magical, unreal. It was a moment frozen in time, forever to be remembered. Late that night, once everyone else had fallen asleep, I started writing. I wasn't able to sleep, so I decided what better way to get my mind off the coming day than to put the pen to the paper. I wrote down 3 individual letters, sealed them, and placed them on the dining room table. I looked out the window, the dark night surrounding everything in view. Just a few silhouettes of trees formed from the moonlight. The floorboards creaked, and I swiftly turned, met with my daughter's drowsy face.
Dad, What are you doing up?
I'm more curious about what you're doing up. We shared a quiet chuckle and I opened the fridge, taking a cookie off the top of the pile Autumn had made that morning. I offered one to Hazel, who would never turn down a late-night cookie.
You nervous to go back into the field then?
What? Where'd you get that idea? How'd you know?
You're never awake this late unless you're stressed. Jensen swung by earlier, and you brought us to that beautiful tree seemingly out of nowhere. You're afraid that tonight was your last opportunity.
She was exactly right. Yeah, spot on. You're very intuitive, Hazel. That's good. After our chat, she went back to bed and I sat at the table until the time came and I met Jensen at the airport. He handed me a file and I boarded the plane. It was a small jet. Not top of the line, but certainly not average. There were 1 or 2 security personnel and most of my old squad was already waiting on the plane. We exchanged friendly greetings and got settled, reviewing the file. Foreign intelligence told us there would be a targeted attack on an elite squad, but they were unaware of what team. Jensen told us that our goal is to find out what team, protect them, and eliminate the threat. Simple enough, especially for us. The flight took off, the quiet hum of the engines droning as most of the team caught up on some much-needed sleep, but not me. I kept reviewing the file, checking the information, trying to piece together who was the target. Then I realized something. Not many people would notice such a small detail, but I'd learned to be very aware of my surroundings. The engines didn't sound right, like they were just a recording. I leaned closer to an overhead speaker, and indeed, the hum of the engines was coming from the system, not the plane itself. Looking out the window, I spotted the engine slowly spinning to a stop as the jet began to pitch forward. Strangely, no emergency system seemed to be going off. I ran to the cockpit, knocking past my half-asleep compatriots. Busting down the door, I was met with an empty cockpit, the glass shattered and the control panel destroyed. Quickly, everyone! Get out now! We tried to get to the parachutes and emergency exit, but the jet's slow pitching quickly turned into a near nosedive, making it impossible to move. Did you know that the movies always get it wrong? There's no blaring alarms, no desperate crying, no screaming. It's quiet. The only sounds being the rushing of the air as the aircraft plummets down and the whispers of prayers all around. Everything is dramatized in the media nowadays. The one thing they do get right is the heart-stopping terror of watching the ground rush towards you. The wreckage spread over a vast space. The wing had collided with a radio tower, ripping the compartment in half and launching both parts in opposite directions. The search and rescue mission took 33 hours and spanned 37 square miles. Most of the people on the plane, my team, the security, and the single steward died on impact, and a couple more died either during the recovery or at the hospital. I do not envy Jensen's responsibility to tell the families that they'd said their last words to their loved ones. Never have, never will. I imagine it must have been extra difficult telling Autumn, Hazel, and James, considering how close he'd grown to them. Weeks turned into months, and life carried on with a somber weight hanging over their heads. Autumn having to be strong for James and Hazel, struggling to come to terms with my death. Hazel felt like she was the one that needed to carry on my legacy, and she pushed herself to her wits' end, only finding comfort in pictures of us, little memories, forever frozen in time. One evening, as the stars shone overhead, Hazel made her way to the familiar hill where the weeping willow stood. The air was cool and crisp, the moon cast an ethereal glow over the landscape. She knelt down and carefully placed a small box into a hollow in the ground. Inside lay mementos, my dog tags, a faded photograph, and the letter I had written to her. As she covered the box with dirt, tears pricked at her eyes, and in that moment, beneath the watchful gaze of the willow, Hazel felt a sense of closure. She stepped back, looking up at the tree as its branches swayed in the gentle breeze. She closed her eyes, a single tear rolling down her cheek.
As the curtains draw to a close on this enchanting story, remember that our doors will always stay open, welcoming you into another mystical tale. Until our paths cross again, whether in the realms of suspense, romance, or the fantastical, may your day or night be filled with joy and comfort. Goodbye for now, dear listeners. Narrator and Kado, voiced by TheKingThing. Hazel, voiced by EdenGenesis. Jensen, voiced by Benjamin Strickland. Written by Isaac Larson. Hosted by TheVoidLegend.